Hello, this is Heather Hoffman, and I have a fun, bright watercolor distress ink background to show you for my card today. And I'm starting off by using the beautiful My Strength and Song Lord. It's an itty bitty from Unity Stamp. And I'm using some distress ink watercolor paper. You can use any watercolor paper. It just needs to be something sturdy to stand up to all the water and moisture that this card is going to have on it. And I like to use my Misty to line this up. The texture of the watercolor paper, it's nice to be able to stamp several times to make sure you get a really, really good impression for the embossing powder to stick to. I'm using the textured side of the watercolor paper. This particular paper, you can use the back side, which is smoother. That will make it easier to get a good sturdy impression, especially if you do not have a Misty. But I stamped it on there 3 times using clear watercolor ink, or watermark ink, I'm sorry. And then I'm sprinkling clear embossing powder. You could also use white. I just like the clear particularly because it just looks a little more magical when you add the color over the top and there's nothing there. And I sped up this little bit. I just used my heat gun to heat set these real quick. Again, it's just clear, so it's really hard to see in the photo. And now I have some distress ink that I pulled out, and I have 3 different color combos. This one I used Abandoned Coral, Spiced Pumpkin, and Mustard Seed. And they're mini cubes, and I'm just smearing them right directly over the top. You notice I'm kind of adding a little bit of a wave pattern. And then just mist some water over the top, and the colors magically blend together and fade out. And I'm using just a clean cloth to kind of catch any stray moisture. This one's a baby wipe. You could use a dry paper towel. And then I'm wiping a little bit off the embossing that's sticking to that to make those letters pop a little more. Ideally, it'd probably be better to wait till this dried a little bit more to do that, then you don't pull off the color too. But if you're in a hurry, it's not too hard to do this. And I'm tipping it around a little to let the colors run, and then I'm just using a clear block to hold it flat while it dries. And then I'll move on to the other one. And for this one, I used a combination of different blue inks. You could use greens, you could use purples, you could use all kinds of fun combinations. I really like how this looks like an ocean or a mermaid color combination. So the same thing, I rubbed them on there. I'm misting my water over the top and letting them run. I think I got a little more water on this one, so it kind of bled a little further. Again, I dried off some of the extra a little bit, and again wiped it off of the letters to kind of help those pop a little bit. It'll still wipe off when it dries because it is water soluble ink, especially if you use a damp baby wipe or something along those lines. And then once again, I'll set it aside. I'll let my clear blocks hold them flat and let those dry naturally. Now I wanted to add some ink splatters over the top, so I'm smudging some of the same exact colors of ink that I used on the original ink smooshing. And I'm going to use a water brush. You could just add a little water and use a normal paintbrush to dampen those down a little and move the other one out of the way so I don't get splatters there. And just dip it in the wet ink and splatter it over. Again, I waited until the original part had dried. This way it'll leave distinct droplets, and it just won't run into the water and the moisture. So a little bit of time to the process, but it's worth it for the finished effect that you get. And I did the same thing on the other card, on the blues and greens. I just didn't videotape both of them because it was the same process for both of them. And then once I finished this, I decided to come back in and add a little more color just around the letters, just to make them pop a little bit more. You could still see them, but I wanted to make it a little bolder. So on this one, I already used the deepest blue just on the bottom there, and you can already see how much more those letters pop out. So I'm just going to add in the other 2 colors as well. And again, I'm just using my water brush. I find that a water brush works really well to blend out the color and not get too harsh of a line. Again, if you just have a clean brush and a cup of water handy, you can do the same thing here as I did on here. And then I also came back in on these once again with that damp baby wipe and clean the color off of the heat embossing. Again, it resists it, so you can wait till this dries all the way and then catch it then, but I just wanted to do it on the video. And for this, I used the wet water brush actually first, and then I think I came back in after the video and wiped a little more off of there. But there you go, nice bright and bold. I trimmed those panels down to a little smaller than an A2 card base, and I used my sewing machine just to stitch across the top so that they were all attached. Thanks so much for coming by. Have a great day.